Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Few Connect Live for your Wednesday. It's just gone 12 o'clock on the hour. For those joining us for the first time, we normally wait until a couple of minutes after the hour before we kicking things off. And today will be no different. We do have a bunch of people tuning in. I can see on our social media channels on Facebook and on YouTube Live, which is awesome. There's a chat facility within both those platforms. Please feel free to add any comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on both of those. They help us out immensely. For those joining for the first time, we've had a bunch of new registrations, as we always do, over the last couple of days. So we're expecting a few new faces here. Your microphones are muted by default on the Zoom call. Your cameras are turned off. Please feel free to turn those on. Few Connect Live coming to you live in 60 seconds time. Thank you. Okay, 2 minutes past 12. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Few Connect Live for your Wednesday. My name is Cam. I don't host the show. I just make sure it goes off without a hitch, which, let's face it, doesn't always happen, Alex Tulio. It's 2 minutes past 12. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. We have our loyal following on our Zoom call. How are you?
I'm good. And you know what? After the excitement of no internet yesterday and broadcasting from my phone at 2 minutes to 12, it's been a fairly boring lead up to today, but never say never. Anything can still happen with a live show, but great to be here. And Jude, it's a good reminder. I'd actually forgotten somewhere. It is the 1st of July. How did that happen? So yes, happy new financial year. Where have the last few months gone? As we always say, and to echo Cam's sentiments, welcome everyone. It is so great, as always, to see familiar faces there. And we do always say, please do put your cameras on. If it's a bit uncomfortable, good, get into it. Put the camera on, because this is all about community, building networks, and really connecting with other people. And this has been one of the real hallmarks of these sessions, which, 12 weeks down the track, we've really been building this community as we go. So please do. And as I always say, connect with someone on this call that you don't know. It's a great icebreaker, and you all tell us that you need to build your network. So what better opportunity? For those of you who are new to this program and to Few, welcome. It is so great to have you here. My name's Alex Tulio, CEO of Few. This is a new development. On Friday we announced that Judith is our fabulous founder. So this is my second show as the official CEO. So great to be here. And of course, with Few, we're all about the positive progression of women, of meritocracy, of great communities, deep networks, and support. So this is why we're here. And of course, we welcome our amazing men that are part of this community as well. As you can see on the screen, please do share this, as Cam said. A big part of what we do here is connecting and sharing, and this is free to all employees of our amazing corporate partners. So please do share the link. And as I always say, even if you know someone who could benefit from some amazing speakers, wisdom, masterclasses, community, share it with them anyway. We love to have everyone along here. So as always, thank you for our amazing corporate partners. We would not be here without you, and it's great that you are such a big part of this community and growing every day. So it's brilliant to have you here, and we love having you as part of this community. So as always, what have we got? Well, we've got plenty coming up, and it won't surprise those of you who tune in on a regular basis. So we do have some amazing speakers today, of course, not least our guest today, David, but I'll introduce David in a moment more formally. So tomorrow, we have the amazing Julie Coates, who's a managing partner at PwC. We're going to be talking about some really interesting stuff with Julie, and not least, as always, a bit of the personal journey, a 30-year global career, and her dogs and her teenage sons and all of that really interesting stuff, as well as some real thought leadership that PwC is doing around rebooting Australia. What happens from here from an economic standpoint? So that's going to be super interesting. And then next Tuesday, I've got the amazing Leela Smith, who's the Deputy CEO of the Aurora Foundation, and they do a lot of work around Indigenous leadership. And we recorded our promo this morning, and I'm already excited about that one coming up, which won't surprise any of you. Yes, I do get excited, but for good reason. We have amazing guests on this show. And of course, on Fridays, we have our masterclasses. So for members, as I always remind you, this is part of your membership. So don't forget that all you need to do, and Cam has already put the link in the chat, all you have to do is either click on the link or go to our website. This is part of your membership, so take advantage of these amazing experts that do few member-only events for us. And I know that we've got Cam, not Cam Upshall, Cam Shepherd, who is running our masterclass for us on Friday. So Cam, give us a short, sharp, why do I want to be there? What are you going to cover? And what are we going to do in Friday's masterclass?
Thanks very much for having me, Alex, and everyone. So on Friday, we're going to get over that question that we often get, or that challenge, which is we've got to stop the doing and we've got to start the thinking work. And so we're going to learn how to create space for the time and for vision setting and team development, how we can create self-sufficiency within the team so that our team members are growing and progressing, and avoid, and last of all, how to avoid the relapse. So falling back into that cycle of feeling stuck. That's what we're going to cover on Friday.
Awesome. And I know when I've been speaking to Cam, so all of you on the line, every single one of you tell us and that you suffer from busyness, the back-to-back meetings. And I think we all know that being a leader, the gig is not doing the do. It is making space to create an environment for your team, to make decisions, to think. And I'm sure David and I will get into all of that shortly. But so this is a really great masterclass. If you're sitting there and listening to, yes, that sounds like a good idea, but I just don't know how, I'm stuck in the detail and the doing, this is absolutely a great investment, just over 60 minutes of your time on Friday to actually do that. So again, all you need to do is click on the link to register. And for those of you who aren't yet our members, as I always say, why not? This is an amazing community. We are very passionate about it. You can see we've got loads going on, and we invite you to have a gift on us. Come and join myself and Judith. We do monthly group mentoring sessions, which are confidential group mentoring sessions that we do on a monthly basis. They're really powerful. They form a really powerful peer network, as well as doing lots of problem solving, and of course one of my masterclasses. So please do come and join as our guest and see what all the fuss is about for yourself. And I know Cam will have put that link in there as well. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's guest, David Grybas. Now I'm going to introduce you via your formal bio, David, before we get into it. So for those of you who don't yet know David, he is the Chief Executive Officer for BNP Paribas Asset Management for Australia and New Zealand. And he was appointed to this position in 2012. David joined BNP Paribas Asset Management in 2005 originally, and was previously the co-head of Institutional Business Development for Australia and New Zealand. Prior to joining BNP Paribas Asset Management, he was an institutional relationship manager at HSBC Asset Management Australia, as well as manager investments for State Trustees Limited. David has a Bachelor of Commerce from Deakin University, majoring in economics, marketing and management, and a graduate diploma in applied finance and investment from the Financial Services Institute of Australasia. Now, we're going to take this slide down, David, because I always say it's good to do the formal bio, but far more interesting to hear from yourself. So welcome. Thanks for being here. You're on mute. Don't worry.
Now I'm off. I'm off mute. We've tested that technical stuff, and guess what? It worked in the test, but we've got it running now. Look, thanks very much for having me, Alex. It's an absolute delight and pleasure to be here today with you. I was really excited when you called up and made the opportunity to come on. Yes, that's the bio, the more technical bio, as you put it. Look, just a little bit more background about myself. 44 years of age, married to a Mexican Australian, 2 kids, 13 and 10. So the wonderful times coming up in front of us right now. Melbourne-based CEO, which has presented challenges with BNP Paribas having a lot of its group in Sydney as well over the years. I'm pretty much about to click over 15 years here at BNP Paribas Asset Management. So it's been a wonderful journey for that time. But as I say, delight to be with you today. Thank you.
And welcome. And it does make me laugh that you had mute on, because still after all this time, I still do it. And as I always say, I do my best work when the mute button's on, clearly. So this is a live show, so it's all part of it. So tell us a bit more about your journey, because it's so great hearing the backstory. And so kids, married to a Mexican Australian, and obviously you've been with BNP for a long time. So tell us a bit about your career journey. I mean, did you set out to be a CEO of an asset manager, or was that something that popped up along the way?
No, look, investments is something that I've always loved ever since I was a kid. I started trading share portfolios at 13, 14 years of age. It's just something that I enjoyed. My father was actually a banker with one of the major banks here. So I saw the finance angle from a young age. It always interested me. So finance was always the pathway for me. Once I got out of university, I was very fortunate to be offered an analyst role within the State Trustees investment team. And that was great because, I was learning very, very quickly around investments. We were managing investments in-house at that time. And so that was a great experience. Some management changes happened over those first couple of years, and I found myself at 23 years of age managing about $800 million of assets, which was just a tremendous but scary experience at the same time as well. And I kept pinching myself going, how is it they can put a 23-year-old in charge of these assets, and then presenting to investment committees every month, every quarter, to some very senior people from the finance industry. So just a great learning curve. And so it was always the asset management side that interested me. And it was time then to branch out. I was fortunate to be able to join HSBC Asset Management. There's a great alumni of HSBC people around Australia, certainly in very senior roles at other firms now as well. And then I moved over to BNP when HSBC Asset Management was sold to Challenger back in 2005. And so that journey from 2005 has been absolutely sensational. As I say, almost 15 years to the day. I think it's next week is 15 years to the day. And so that's been great. As I say to people, they say it's a long tenure, and I say, well, you don't stay at a firm unless it's really good for that long. And that certainly has been the case here at BNP.
Speaks volumes about the culture, absolutely. And I want to come back to that, because I've got a list of questions I want to ask you. So as always, we're going to run out of time. I can already tell everyone that we're going to do that. So I want to come back to a few things about culture, and also the fact that you are Melbourne based and the team, basically your team isn't. But before we get there, tell us a bit more about the organisation. So tell us a bit more, for those who don't really know much about BNP Paribas and the asset management business. Tell us a bit about the core business and a bit more about that.
Sure. Best way to describe it, Alex, is BNP Paribas as an organisation has been in Australia for, I think we're up to 138 years now. So we're the oldest foreign bank in Australia. So just a huge history in terms of financial services. Well, we started by financing the wool trade between Europe and Australia. The asset management business, more specifically, has been around since 1986. It's only had 4 CEOs in that time, or heads of the business in that time. So it's sort of a position that you hold very dear in doing that. We've had many incarnations of what we do in Australia. What we do specifically today on the asset management side is all of our investment strategies we offer to clients are based offshore. So all of our investment teams are from offshore. So that could be they're out of Dallas in Texas, Boston, New York, through to Paris, London, Copenhagen. So we have those strategies. And what we're really doing is we're bringing those global investment strategies into clients in Australia, be it superannuation funds, insurance companies, multi-managers, financial advisors, mums and dads. And so that's really our business today. It's a really exciting business because you do get to see the world. So a lot of what we do as well is traveling with clients offshore, obviously not at the moment. But that's been one of the wonderful parts about this organisation, about BNP Paribas. I mentioned it, I think, in our preview we did, we filmed whatever it was last week. We connect people as an organisation. And so that part has been very interesting. So I've actually now lost count of the number of countries that I've visited as a result of BNP Paribas and what we do in connecting people. And so that's an exciting part of the role. And I think that's something that our team really enjoy as well, is having that global view. And that's the way the world is today, let's be honest.
Absolutely. So, apart from the obvious, as you say, but what has been the main impacts? I guess I'm sure there are many from global pandemics, obviously no travel, because I mean, a lot of our audience, you know, they're leaders, it's financial services in all guises that we have here that are, you know, it's a lot about relationship management. So you're thinking about your team, you're thinking about your clients, you're thinking about staff globally. So what have been some of the main things that you've had to adapt to over the last few months and obviously going forward into who knows what?
I think the forward part's going to be interesting. I'll touch on that in a minute. From a business perspective, over the last few months, I mean, that's really challenged us, because a lot of what we do is bringing investment talent into Australia to meet. We call it putting decision makers with decision makers. So, you know, the chief investment officer of a superannuation fund in Australia wants to meet the portfolio manager who is ultimately managing the money. We understand that, and advisors are no different. And so that model has effectively had to change over the last couple of months in particular. And so when the pandemic really hit in the middle of March and we sent all of our staff home, that was the right thing to do very quickly. You know, we very much got together as an executive committee and said, right, what are we going to do now over the next few months? And what we concluded is this is actually the very best time to build a brand in this market. Not only do you need to be close to your clients, that's something we entail anyway, we need to be even closer to our clients. So we set some targets in terms of increasing our client engagement levels substantially, from, you know, doubling some of the activity levels of what our relationship people were doing, building our brand, you know, development of the webinar series. So I think we were one of the first to get to market with, you know, webinar series, and we split them between macro views and portfolio management updates. We then started developing, you know, these portfolio management snapshot series where, you know, we'll put one of our relationship people or heads of our business lines, you know, for a 10-minute Skype conversation and send out to clients. So, yeah, we've just done a huge amount around that sort of the thought leadership, the content piece, and making sure that our clients know we exist. We're completely open for business, and that, you know, you can still talk to us at the same time as well. It's not the same as what it was, and will it come back? Maybe, maybe not. Certainly, probably not for the next 6 months, maybe even 12 months from now. And so we'll just keep adapting. One of the things that has been amazing about the business in the last few months in particular has just been that level of innovation. And I question whether you would get that level of innovation had we not been in this pandemic situation. And it's come from the most junior levels of the firm up to the most senior. And that's actually been exciting to see from a cultural perspective.
I love that you bring that up, because it's an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? And you're not the first leader to say, well, you know, we wouldn't in normal business, whatever normal is, but, you know, pre this, it would have taken X months to remotely mobilize a team and all these other things. And of course, in a crisis, you have no choice, you have to do it. So what do you think, how are you going to capture that spirit of innovation? Especially, I love that you're saying from, you know, the junior right through to the senior staff. Like, as we start to go back to whatever it is or normalize, how are you going to preserve that from a cultural perspective, that real innovative spirit? Or was that always there waiting in the wings?
I think it was always there. I think, you know, the team has always been innovative around what we do as a business. You used a word in the opening that, you know, I love and I talk a lot about in our business is meritocracy. And so, you know, the way that I see our business is, you know, the whole business can sit around the table, as we do every Monday morning, and we run through every operational line that we actually have in the business, and we talk about what's happening. The whole point of doing that is to make sure that, one, you know, what's leadership about? Well, it's about good communication, active with integrity. You can read as many books as you want, and it will tell you all of those things. But communication is just one of the most critical elements for me. And the way that you develop the innovation is through communication, because what you need to do with the meritocracy is to make sure that people feel okay to bring up an idea. But then you also have to foster that in a team environment as well. And, you know, as everyone says, no idea is a bad idea. You know, it's about how you develop and you give people then the autonomy to run away and investigate and do. I think that's the way that we'll keep the innovation going. You know, one thing that I've talked a lot about, certainly as leader of this business over the last 8 years, is that we have to stay ahead of the trend. And if you're not ahead of the trend, you're already behind. And so that's the thing. So, you know, I look at our webinar series now, they've been super successful, you know, huge, you know, hundreds and hundreds of dial-ins every time we run a webinar. But numbers are starting to slip. And why? Because everyone's doing webinars now. So, what's the next piece that we actually do? How do we again engage our clients and our audience in terms of what we're actually doing and make it meaningful for them? Because no one wants just to be pinged with a phone call to ask them, oh, what's happening in your business? It has to be a meaningful conversation.
Absolutely.
So that innovation is going to be really interesting in the months ahead.
And I love what you say there. I mean, if we get right down to the core of leadership, you're right. It's about communication, being visible, even what you were saying before about being more visible for all your clients. You were visible and engaging already, but you've ramped it up. Simple to say, but often not to do. So it's really great to hear you talking about that. And especially the innovation comes from the communication, because I think one of the other things that's an oft used phrase is, have create an environment where you're not scared to fail, it's okay to fail. But you can't just say that. That's like for your staff really to feel like they can fail and fail fast and all those things. You've got to have that culture of trust in you, the communication, all that sort of thing. So I think that's super important. It's great to hear you talk about that. Let's just then, as a good segue, so let's just talk about the fact that, as a CEO, you are in Melbourne and your team is in Sydney, and you're already touching on a few of these things, but how do you go about building that culture and the communication, everything you're talking about when you are in another state? Because I guess really you've been doing this remotely well before COVID based on that.
Yeah, we have been doing it for a long time. So we have, 3/4 of our staff are based in Sydney, and of course BNP Paribas as a firm which has banking and security services operations in Australia as well, are largely based in Sydney. There's office here in Melbourne with staff, but it's largely based in Sydney. I'll tell you a little story. In terms of when I was being interviewed for this role as CEO, we'd had a very successful period on our institutional business leading up to the end of 2011. And I was taken up to Hong Kong, where the head of our Asia Pacific business really is. And I was interviewed by the head HR for the region and then the head of Asia Pacific at the time. And they said, well, we think you probably need to move to Sydney to run the business because that's where, everyone's been. And I, very boldly talked and said to the head of Asia Pacific, who was a Scottish guy and was running Asia Pacific, spending 2 weeks in Asia and 2 weeks out of Scotland. I said, well, if you can do Asia Pacific from Scotland, I can do Sydney, Melbourne pretty easy. And he said, okay, fair point. You probably got the job. But then it was just all about making people comfortable that was actually the case. And when you're new into a leadership role or whatever role or team leader role or management role, whatever it is, you have to deliver what you say. And so if you say I'm going to be in Sydney every week on a Wednesday and a Thursday for the next 4 weeks, then that's what you do, unless there's a very, very good reason. And it's the same in managing a team. If someone asks you to deliver something by a certain time, you have to deliver it. And that's where you build the trust of actually doing these things. The other part that I talk to, certainly some of the females that I mentor in our organisation, both here and in Asia Pacific, up in Hong Kong as well, very much is around, you have to be visible as well. And, a phone call is great, but being visible in front of people where you can actually eyeball someone is really important as well. And so to me, that's how a big part of running the business where we've had remote people is putting that effort in and making sure that you're visible there. And then just simple things, back in 2012, video conference technology existed, but not like today with Zoom and Skype and all of those things. Every meeting back from 2012 onwards was a video conference. Because again, then you're making also people accountable for turning up and being there and visible at the same time as well. And now, you fast forward to today, Alex, and well, everything's on video today, and that's the expected norm today. But there's some of the things. And finally, again, it's also about empowering the people in those remote offices as well. And I'm part of our regional leadership team for Asia Pacific as well, and we have, I'm on the board for our Hong Kong business as well. You have to empower the people in those offices to do their jobs and trust them to do their jobs as well. And so, in our Sydney office, for instance, I have been incredibly well supported by, 2 very long-term employees. Our CFO and I have worked together for 15 years, and our head of marketing, has been with us since 2010 as well. And these 2 people have run the Sydney office effectively, but that's been part of their role as well. And they stand up and they take that with pride, and that's great. And you've got to let people do their jobs. You can't be overpowering. We're all guilty of perhaps getting into the weeds too much. but there are times when you just have to step back.
And I think, again, there is so much gold here because these are the simple foundational things that lots of people talk about, but it's different. And I love that you're calling out it's actions and words, and it doesn't have to be anything convoluted. It's just if you say do something, do it, and empower your staff and trust people to do their job. Let's talk a bit about which is related. And I know you and I, as I always say, it's great because I get to have all these behind the scene chats. And we were talking about diversity. So there's two things that actually I love to chat to you about. I know we were chatting about diversity and the benefits that you think that brings, and the 50-50 gender split in the exec team. And then I also want to talk about, I know that BNP Paribas does a lot around sustainability as well. So I'd love to get into that. But first, let's talk about diversity and your take on that and what you do in your business.
It's amazing that we still have to talk about diversity today, because to me, we do. It's important, but it just should be the norm. I mean, it really should be. And yes, we have an executive team and asset management here that is split 50-50 male, female. It's quite deliberate because, at the end of the day, men and women think differently, and that just should be celebrated because that is what you want around the table. And so whilst ultimately, yes, from my perspective, yes, I'm the ultimate decision maker for our business and carry that risk as the CEO and as director. You want all the views coming in from different angles, and that's what diversity does. And it's the same outside of the executive team as well. And so one of the brilliant things about BNP Paribas is again, talk a little bit about diversity in a second, is we're not afraid to move people around the globe. And so what you get there is instant diversity. So if you go and, you go and put a French manager based out of Singapore, they're going to bring different things to an Asian environment. Likewise, if you put a Japanese manager into the Aussie context, they're going to bring different things and different views. And that's some of the things that I think is just so critically important about diversity. It's respecting diversity and making sure you understand different cultural aspects, but making sure at the same time as well as you have that diversity in the team, because if you do, you're actually going to get better outcomes. And it's proven.
And it's so much more than gender. It's as you say, background, culture, experience, thinking, everything. Absolutely.
It is. And Alex, I mean, I mentioned at the start, I'm married to a Mexican Australian. We met in London 17 years ago. And, there is diversity in itself in terms of a different worldview that you get every time you go home and have a conversation about what's happening in North America, for instance. It's a completely different view. And so that diversity comes, at a personal level and both at a professional level. And we shouldn't forget that both are really important in helping frame, individuals and helping build your career at the same time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I think goes a lot. I mean, obviously you've already talked about it, but this focus you have also on developing staff internally as well, because I think like you've already said, a lot of the innovation that you've experienced in the last little while has come from some of the most junior levels right through to exec. And I think sometimes as leaders, especially in big organizations, it's easy to overlook the gold or, the rough diamonds, the talent that's there in front of you that needs a bit of love and attention to develop.
That's one of my favourite parts about being a leader and running the business. It absolutely is to see people grow and develop into their roles. And, invariably we lose people to other organisations. And yes, it hurts when you lose a really good person to another firm and to a competitor in particular. But at the same time as well, you also have to celebrate some of those things. And so, there are a number of contacts in this industry of people who have worked within this organisation that we have grown and developed over time. Now, we also have a number of people in our organisation here at Asset Management and in the bank more generally in Australia, but certainly in asset management, that we have spent a lot of time developing, and we've put into our talent programs, and we've made sure that they can grow and they can go into different roles. And that to me is to see someone grow and develop is just such a positive aspect of the business at the end of the day. And so I really enjoy that part. And so whenever someone comes to me and says, well, I want to grow and develop and go down this path, it's a yes. Why do you want to go down that path? Is it going to be relevant for you? But how do we get you there? And what are the steps we need to put in place? And I think, again, as an organisation, that's something that BNP Paribas does really well, is investing in the people And it's why I mentioned at the start again, it's why you stay at a firm for a long time. It's for those factors.
Oh, absolutely. It all goes to culture, doesn't it? It's all really important. Tell us a bit now about the global sustainability strategy for BNP Paribas. Like, I'd really like to get a bit more into what that's about and how it plays out in Australia as well.
Sure. I'll try and refrain from getting into the big sales pitch here, Alex. The salesperson might come out of me. But I mean, this is exciting as an organisation. You know, sustainability and sustainable finance has been in BNP Paribas' DNA for years and years and years. I mean, we're some of the biggest financiers of renewable energy, for instance, in Europe. As an organisation, we've been running SRI products and sustainability products since 2002. We're one of the first signatories to the UNPRI. So there's lots that we've been doing. More recently, certainly over the last few years, we've really taken another step forward and a leap forward in that space. And what we've really determined as an organisation is that sustainability is the way of the future, and it's what investors expect. Institutions, mums and dads. We also have a climate challenge. We know that, and I think ultimately, when you cut through all of it, Alex, I talked about having kids these days. You ultimately want to leave the world in a better place for the next generation, and so there's a lot of that coming through. So what we've done as a firm around sustainability is we have what's known as our sustainability strategy. It sort of has a number of pillars that fall off it. One of it's around ESG integration and making sure ESG is integrated across every single investment portfolio we run across the globe. That is absolutely done. And now, so if you talk to any portfolio manager from anywhere around the globe, they'll tell you how important ESG is in their investment process. And they don't just say that, they believe it.
ESG, for those who don't know that acronym, we do love a good acronym in this industry.
Environmental, social, governance factors. And we firmly believe it does, investing with that in mind as well, does deliver a better risk-adjusted outcome. We also then, stewardship is another pillar of what we do. So stewardship, what I mean by that is very much engaging with companies that we invest in, and even companies we don't invest in, to make sure that their business practices match what we want to do as well. So, for instance, if I think about shareholder resolutions around executive remuneration, if we think there are executive remuneration levels that are out of line with what industry norms are or with what our expectations are, we will vote against those. Likewise, on climate change policies at organisations, we will vote for or against those. So we're very active in our stewardship and our engagement with institutions. We will divest from companies if we don't believe they are taking the necessary actions. But that is absolutely the last resort for us. We would prefer to engage with them to get that change. We also then have a strategy of what we call the 3 E's. And so that's really our future making strategy. So that is very much around the energy transition. So we all know about our climate change challenges. The world has to move from burning fossil fuels to using more renewable energy. So we as an organisation are deeply committed to actually helping that happen, if we're going to meet the Paris 2% goals. So that's one aspect of the 3E. The second one is very much around the environment. So it's looking at what we invest in. What is the water efficiency of the investment portfolios that we're doing and the companies that we're investing in? How do we engage with them to have them, if they're a very water intensive industry, how do we get them to have more water efficiency in terms of their business? So we engage with them around those things. The third thing we do, again, on the environmental piece is the carbon footprint. What's the carbon footprint of our portfolios? How do we engage with companies to improve that carbon footprint? And so we're measuring those in our portfolios. And then the third pillar of this 3 E's strategy is, again, around equality and inclusive growth. So that is, again, making sure that we have diversity, like we talked about now, spread through organisations. And just simple, I mean, this is, FEW is very much a networking organisation dedicated to or really focused on female networking. It's about what are we doing in female leadership in our senior management positions, not only in asset management, but also on our board levels. So we've set some very simple targets for asset management globally for our business, for all the various board positions that we have available. By the end of 2020, 30% of those positions must be filled by females.
By the end of this year.
End of this year. Yep. And so we're very much on track to meet those targets.
What are some of the challenges around, I mean, this last pillar around the equality? I mean, let's not get into quotas or not, but what are some of the challenges that you find around actually making those numbers achievable? And obviously, as you said, you're on track. Are you finding is there a lack of females putting their hand up? Is there a lack of female talent? Are you finding, like, how are you working through that challenge?
It's a combination of all of the above. I think, when you strip it down, you have a talent pool that's available today, which is very good. There's also parts of the talent pool that are, that should be available today, but perhaps have stepped back because, they've decided to take maternity leave and take a break or do whatever. We have to engage further in that space and make it far easier for mums to return to the office. This pandemic's going to be the best thing ever for that setup. It really is. It will help hopefully open a lot of eyes and minds as to how you can achieve that in a better way. The second part for me is very much about then the development of the talent pool. And again, these are some things, I don't want it to sound like a sales pitch, but these are some of the wonderful things that BNP Paribas does. We have mentor programs, across the globe and certainly in Asia Pacific as well, where we have our talent programs, our identified talents and leaders, the next generation leaders. And so we are very much working with a lot of the female talent in building out, dedicated female mentoring sessions. So I'm now on to my third mentorship, of someone based out of our Sydney office. And I've been doing this for years. I did one with a particular person based out of Hong Kong who's still in the firm, and she's gone through different roles and into leadership roles. And I now have someone in Sydney. And again, these are the things that you have to do as a firm to develop that leadership pool and talent pool. Otherwise, we will just never meet what we should be meeting.
It's really great to hear, and it's good to hear you talk about mentors as well, because a big part of what we do is also the advocate program. And it's about having the right people in your corner, objective people that can support your career. Have you had who's some great mentors that you've had in your career?
It's an interesting question. There's probably a couple that spring to mind. I'm a former boss of mine who was the head of Asia Pacific and a global head of sales prior to that. He was someone I got to know over, quite closely, working with him for sort of 10 years. He just had a very open mind to the way that you can run a global organization. Very, very strict in number of mannerisms and the way that he approached business, but certainly an open mind and certainly built and helped develop people. Another person who has been very good more recently, certainly over the last few years, has been actually one of our HR people up in Hong Kong. And she's one of the, I think, undiscovered gems in our asset management business in the way that she engages with people and allows people to grow and develop. And so, it's not a formal mentor program, but it's certainly someone I talk to a lot and listen to what she says in terms of what's happening from a global perspective as well. They're two people that spring to mind immediately.
We all need them, and this is not new for this community. This is why we're so passionate about advocates and mentors. You need the right people in your corner. Are you happy to take a question? I know we've got Gordon. You may as well just ask the question for yourself. You've got a couple of parts there, so do you want to just unmute and ask that?
Sure, no problem at all. Hi, David. Thank you very much. I think some of the things you said resonate with a lot of places. I was just wondering what's one of the biggest out-of-the-box changes that's happened in the business, unconventional, one of the things that's really surprised you. You talked about some of the, not necessarily the leaders, but everyone's been coming up with ideas. So what's some of the biggest out-of-the-box things that's happened?
It's a tough question, Gordon. Thank you. Honestly, I think it's been the adaptation to the working from home environment and how that's actually happened. I mean, we've had a number of our staff who have worked from home in the past, and we have formal policies and all those in place. I think the fact that everybody went home, and then you have to deal with talking to people over Zoom and Skype and all of those things. And we all have the usual stuff where the mute button goes on and then, can you hear me? And, can you see my presentation? And all of that stuff going on. I think, for me, the innovation and the adaptation there has been just the staff and the way that the staff have actually just picked up and run with it and just not worried about it. They've just got on with it. Yeah. And it's a really good reminder that, at the end of the day, people are really resilient. Mm. And our community is resilient. I mean, you just have a look at what's happening in Victoria now. Sure, there's an outcry about lockdowns in certain suburbs happening, but people will adapt. And that's one of the things that I think, and it's not a pinpointed like innovation per se, Gordon, but to me, that's innovative just in the way people have adapted so easily to the new working environment.
That's great. Thanks, Gordon. And then we've got another question. I'm sorry, I think it's Vesa. Did you want to ask your question or I can ask for you?
You can ask. I'm at home, so there's a bit of background noise here.
Oh, no worries. Well, thanks for the question. So this is, so David, it's first of all, thank you for a very insightful talk. I'm curious to hear your views on business enterprises working in space-related industries and technology. How do you see the role of investments in this area?
Wow, that is one from left field. Vesa, thank you. Thank you very much for that one. Look, I'm not sure how to answer that question, to be honest, Vesa. I mean, it depends which angle you're coming at with that. Certainly, from an investment perspective, you look at some of the things that, for instance, Tesla as an organization have been doing in their SpaceX and their programs and all those things. I think they're wonderful. If I'm to put the investment slant on it, we will look at anything where we can actually, potentially generate a return for clients that makes sense, obviously, with our sustainability and our ESG framework in mind. So I think, what's happening in that sector is really exciting. And certainly the technology that's coming into, space exploration, space travel and the like is fantastic. I hope that some of that, a lot of that translates into the aviation industry. I mean, if we have a look today, Vesa, at just what's happened in the aviation industry, you've effectively grounded, most of the airlines, a lot of the airlines in the world. And so, what's it done for the world? Well, it's cleared our skies. We've all seen the pictures. You can see the Himalayas from India, and you can see, the shots of some of the pollution over China clearing. So is there ways that technology can come into the aviation industry to actually perhaps reduce our carbon footprint further? That's maybe the way I'd answer that. I'm not sure exactly if that's an answer you're looking for, but it's a tough one.
I think it was an excellent answer to a massive, great question, but broad. More than 2 minutes can do it justice, but I think you gave it a red hot crack, so that's well done. Jasmine, I know you've got a quick question too.
Yes, thanks so much for sharing your time with us today, David. I'm hoping you can be really brutally honest here. That would be fabulous. So as a female, person that's looking to rise up and, become more successful in her career, what do you think is one of the worst mistakes we do make as females when we do try to present ourselves and when we try to, further ourselves? What are the things that you think we should work on to do differently? Please be really honest. That would be very helpful.
Sure. I hope you take this honestly. I don't think you can actually pinpoint anything. Let's be real here. Men and women are different, and that's just the nature of the world. I don't think there's anything that a man does. Well, there's lots of things that men do incorrectly, lots of things that women do incorrectly. But as long as you're acting with integrity and you're true to yourself, don't try and be someone that you're not. Ultimately, at the end of the day, focus on the things that you're really good at and the skill and value that you add to that position. And if you don't get it the first time, well, yeah, sure, it's going to annoy you, but find another way of going back to it. And one of the things that, I talk about with some of the people that I've mentored or mentor now today still is, networking is more than just attending a lunch once a month. And networking is more than just listening to a webinar. Sure, you pick up stuff and they're really useful. But networking is also about, when you see something of interest that might interest someone else, flick that email onto them, or out of nowhere, just drop someone a note to say, hi, how you going? Was thinking over the other day when I was, catching the train to the office. And that's how you build a network. And ultimately, that's where the opportunities ultimately open up for you, because then you become more confident in your own self. And actually, when you go for the positions, you'll present that and you'll become more natural.
Well done. How was that 5 minutes in the hot seat? Good response. So I think there's some really really important messages there, and I can see you nodding as well, Jasmine, because it is about right culture, being ourselves. I think stepping forward and grabbing opportunities. And I mean, you've talked about this right throughout, David. Just in illustrating the culture and everything in your environment as well. It's putting your hand up for the next role, saying you want to develop. Having those conversations with trusted people. I think that's really key to this. So look, as I predicted, we're out of time, and I know you've no doubt got a very busy day. Thank you again so much. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with before we finish up, whether it's on leadership, culture, sustainability? Take your pick.
Not really anything specific, Alex. I just want to say congratulations to you in the new role. I think it's great that you're taking on that role, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. We need more people like you and doing what you're doing with your organisation, because I think it's just absolutely fantastic. Just also thank you very much for having me on your program, and I really appreciate it. I'll leave it there.
Oh, well, thank you. And very, very appreciative of your kind words. Thanks again for your time. So great to have you here as part of this amazing community. Thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning into another awesome session. Have a brilliant afternoon. And you heard it also from David. Networking is more than just attending an event. You have an incredibly powerful network here. Connect with each other. Talk outside of these sessions. I can see Gordon putting his thumb up. Take advantage of this incredible community. So thanks, everyone. See you at 12 tomorrow for what will be another amazing session with Julie Coates, Managing Partner from PwC. See you then, and thanks again, David.
Thanks, Julie.